What is up, guys? It is Joe here from Joe Talks Wrestling, and the other day I did a poll on here basically saying to you guys that I have had a few new video ideas and I wanted you guys to vote on which one you wanted to see first. This one got the pick. It's going to be titled something like Modern Wrestling Lacks Psychology or something along those lines. Now, to break it down for everyone, what psychology is, if you're not in the business or if you're not necessarily, you don't really understand what I'm talking about when I talk about psychology, in-ring, storytelling, wrestling-wise, this is it, plain and simple. Psychology is about making something make sense in the context of what you are doing, whether that be a match, a promo, whatever. It needs to make sense. Now, a prime example here of something not making sense and not having psychology, let's take the main event from AEW All In at Wembley Stadium last year. Going into the show, the promos Adam Cole was cutting on MJF was, no matter what, I will do whatever I have to do to beat you and take your AEW World Championship. Then, in the match, Cole hits MJF with a brainbuster on the steel steps, rolls in the ring, and is about to take a count-out victory. When if he took a count-out victory, in the rules of wrestling, in the psychology of the match, he wouldn't have won the championship. He wouldn't have done whatever it takes to win the championship because he wouldn't have won. Max then slid back in the ring and managed to break the count at about 9, I believe. But Cole wasn't rushing to get him back in the ring. That doesn't make sense. Now, the general term for psychology is breaking down the in-ring structure of a match. So you've got a babyface, you've got a heel. The general psychology of the match is the heel can't out-wrestle the babyface, so he has to use underlying tactics. He has to cheat to try and get one over on the babyface. Then the babyface is taking the heat, getting beaten up, whatever. The heel's cheating to get him to that position. The babyface starts to get a bit of hope, which allows him to get back in the match, show some fight before the heel cuts him off by doing something underlying, whether that would just be whatever the heel has to do to cut him off and get the babyface down. Then he heats up double time on him because he's like, how dare you try and get one up on me? That's ring psychology. That's absolutely fine, but it's not necessarily what I'm talking about today. I'm more talking about the fact of, I don't even know how you would explain it really. Psychology is the only term I can think of. I'm trying to discuss how things don't make sense or how it shits on the business in other aspects. Another one I'm going to use for an example is AEW having spot fest wrestling, not traditional psychological ways of doing a match. It's spot. That the wrestling fans there have become conditioned to seeing that stuff. If you take, I believe it was Forbidden Door last year, Sonata versus Jack Perry. Sonata's finisher was a moonsault. A moonsault, that is impressive. You see a moonsault, you're like, wow. He hit a moonsault on Jack Perry and pinned him 1, 2, 3, and the crowd were confused because they are used to seeing more, spot. The one person that really gets me going on this, there's two people, Will Ospreay and Orange Cassidy. Those guys, I personally believe their lack of selling, their lack of psychology really shits on the business. Now, I have watched Orange Cassidy and Penta trade Canadian destroyers, then a package pile driver on the apron just to kick out at 2. Now, when you do that, every other match on the card that doesn't do that and has a normal finisher, you shit on because you make the audience believe that you as a wrestler can take more punishment than all of those guys, and that psychology shits on everyone. Will Ospreay takes brutal moves, gets up, fires up, hits his move in return. That really grinds my gears because it doesn't make sense. How can you take a pile driver type move into a German suplex just to get back up to your feet with enough momentum to fire up and throw your own move in return? Make it make sense. Now, speaking of Will Ospreay, I'm going to use this as another example. And a lot of my examples are AEW based, and a couple of them are All In based, because I was at All In Live. I studied every single match, and every single match except for one, which was the CM Punk Samoa Joe match, had something in it that made me go, well, why have they done that then? That doesn't make sense. And let's take Will Ospreay, Chris Jericho, for example. Chris hits a move on Ospreay. Ospreay kicks out of 2. Now, forgive me if my memory's not serving me correctly, but I'm fairly certain. He hits a standard move, whether it was a suplex, a slam, whatever. Ospreay kicks out of 2. Then Chris hits the code breaker, and I'm 99% sure he kicked out at 1. But if you're kicking out at 1 after you kicked out at 2, you shit all over all the punishment and the moves that you have taken previously to kick out at 2. Kenny Omega, another victim of this. Now, granted, I understand the argument of when Kenny takes the one-winged angel from people, it's happened with Ospreay. He takes the one-winged angel, no matter how deep into the match it is, he kicks out at 2 and he fires up because it's his move. He can't be put down with his move. It makes sense, but at the same time, it does not make sense, because if he can kick out at 1 and fire up from his own move, the only thing that he's doing there is shitting on his own move by showing that it can be kicked out at 1 and fired straight back up out of. It doesn't make sense. Modern wrestling lacks psychology, and it grinds my gears, because fans are conditioned to seeing these things, and then when they see the proper stuff, how stuff is meant to be, they get bored of it. You watch a Randy Orton match and everyone thinks he's a bore fest just because he knows how to work. It really grinds my gears. And once again, guys, I know I'm going on a few tangents here, and I know I've made an example out of Will Ospreay here in particular. I do want to put it on the record. I think Will Ospreay is a fantastic wrestler. You get Ospreay to do any move in the world, he can do it. He's a good promo. He can do whatever you want him to do. He has the potential to be one of the best, but his lack of selling and his lack of understanding here is really holding him back. And you guys may be saying, you know, well, who am I? Who am I to comment on these guys? And that is a very, very valid point. But I have had enough training from some of the best people in the country to understand how this works. I don't personally believe I am yet at a level where my body allows me to do necessarily the things in my mind that I want to do. I can't execute some moves perfectly. I can't put on a perfect match. But I have the understanding of what one needs to do to get to that point, which I think guys like Ospreay are lacking. They can do all of the flashy stuff. They can do all the moves. They've got the look. They've got the physique. They've got the technique, but they don't have it up here to break a match down, think about what they're going to do and say, actually, that doesn't make sense. Why would you do that here? Because this doesn't make sense. And that's what it is. Psychology primarily is down to, I guess, I've seen Stevie Richards talk about this. It's not what you would do, it's what you wouldn't do. It's not what you should do, it's what you shouldn't do. You think about it and break it down that way, and by process of elimination, you gradually get a better understanding of in-ring psychology. Now, AEW fans love the Spotfest wrestling. I know guys in the industry that love the Spotfest style. I used to. Before I got into wrestling, I used to. But then when I started to understand and when I was trained by veterans of the business and how much they despise it, it's really rubbed off on me, and I want to learn. I have learned the old school way of doing things. So if you're into Spotfest wrestling, you're perfectly entitled to that opinion. But I personally believe that way of wrestling is going to kill the business. It's going to kill the attention spans of fans because they watch a guy like Randy Orton work and they get bored because he's not doing 100 flips and running the ropes a million times. Now, guys, correct me if I'm wrong. I want to hear your arguments in the comments section down below. I'm intrigued to hear your counter arguments in the comments section down below. Once again, I haven't necessarily spoken completely about psychology here. A lot of this has rubbed off onto just my hatred of Spotfest. I've gone off on a Jim Cornette style tangent here, haven't I? But I'm hoping that this video allows you guys to have a better understanding of why modern wrestling, in particular AEW, is failing and why they're doing so much for so little and why that's a bad thing. Anyway, guys, if you have any more questions, let me know in the comment section down below and I will do my best to answer them. For any background on people, I really should have done this at the start. My name is Joe. I've been a professional wrestler on shows for a year. I've been training for 2. I've been a professional wrestling fan for over a decade. And that's why I personally feel like I am able to comment on this, because when we're putting shows together, when we're running through matches on the independents where I am on the BritWres scene, we break these things down. We talk to the veterans. We say, I'm thinking of doing this here. What do you think? And they'll say, no, don't do that, because why would you do that when such and such is going to do this and this doesn't make sense here? And if you do this at this point in the match, it ruins this part of the match. And we break it down to what makes sense. At the end of the day, psychology is all about what makes sense. I've been Joe from Joe Talks Wrestling. You guys have been awesome. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.